On Saturday the 2nd of October, a coach full of British National Party activists set off on a visit to the European Parliament. The trip was organised by Chris Beverley and Eddie Butler, assistants to Andrew Brons, MEP for Yorkshire and Humberside. Visits such as this are subsidised by the European Parliament. After picking up members at various locations, we got a ferry from Dover to Calais. We arrived at our hotel near Waterloo, just south of Brussels, and went out for an informal meal in the evening. The next day, most of us went to visit the Wellington Museum in Waterloo. This is a coaching inn that the Duke of Wellington used as his headquarters, and he stayed there the nights before and after the battle. In the afternoon, we visited the site of the battlefield, which is a couple of miles from the town of Waterloo. After a brief talk in the very centre of Wellington's line, we explored the rest of the battlefield. Then we had an official tour that included 2 films explaining in detail the course of the battle. After that, we climbed the Butte de Lyon, which is a major monument on the battlefield.
Oh well, see you later.
In the evening, we returned to the battlefield for an excellent meal in a very atmospheric restaurant called Le Bivouac de l'Empereur. On Monday morning, we left for Brussels and the European Parliament. After a tour around the outside of the complex, we went in and met up with Andrew Brons, MEP. First we were shown the hemicycle, which is the chamber where the Parliament sits when it is in Brussels. Here is the chamber, almost exactly the same one can be found in Strasbourg. Then we had a very educative talk in a meeting room. The first talk was given by one of the bureaucrats, a pleasant woman from Latvia. Then Andrew Brons gave a very interesting talk about the work he does and his experiences as an MEP.
It was created with effect from 1958 between the 6, and therefore the organisation that we joined in 72 with effect from 1973, from the outset had a political dimension and spoke about political union. I think when people say, well, it was originally intended to be that, I think it was frequently described as that during the referendum campaign. Yes. And many people who voted yes for it in the referendum campaign thought that it was that. But in fact, if you look at the small print then, it was still there then. And the area that could be legislated on was much narrower then. The area that can be legislated on now is much wider. But in those days, the only things they could legislate on would be things like trade and employment policy and consumer protection and so on. Now, of course, it covers a whole wide range of things. So what's happened, actually, is that I think it's always been more than just a trading agreement, but at least it was relatively limited with regard to its legislative scope. Now that legislative scope.
But basically, Andrew, you're saying that we joined because the government used deceit and deception to hoodwink the people of Britain to vote yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But well, not just government, but government and opposition.
Yeah.
Because if you looked at the opinion polls at the beginning of 1975, there was about a 2-to-1 vote for a no. Mm. But once you get the leaders of all the 3 major parties saying the same thing, very difficult for people to who usually follow the wisdom of their party leaders, do anything else. And it switched opinion round just like that. But two things that did crop up just now I'd like to go over. One is, very briefly, one is this SWIFT agreement. This is about passing financial data over to the United States, enormous quantities of it. Well, the compromise was that the European Union will have a representative in the United States, and he or she will decide which bits are relevant and should be handed over to them, which bits shouldn't. Now, you might wonder why I said he or she, bearing in mind that they've appointed the person already, because I don't know who it is. You're probably thinking, well, he's not much good, is he? Nobody else knows who he is either. So we asked the question last week in Libe, who is he? Sorry, we can't tell you. So then members said, well, all right, we won't insist on your telling us who he is. Can you tell us why you won't tell us who he is, what the security implications of that are? And he simply repeated the answer. This is a representative of the Commission. I can't tell you who he is. And this Portuguese left-wing MEP was sort of getting crosser and crosser and said, look, I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you why you can't tell us. But they wouldn't get with that at all.
Andrew, is that an appointed post or is it another elected post?
That's an appointed post.
Yeah. So not really.
But they will be appointing somebody in the long term. This is a short-term appointment. But why they're keeping the position secret, I don't know.
So how do you feel then? Is it not being an elected person?
I'm not sure that. I think to carry out a function like that, which is a sort of semi-judicial function, I don't think that is appropriate to be elected, any more than I think judges ought to be elected. As you know, we're not in favour of the European Union at all, but if we were, and if that body existed, I would think it would be, that kind of body, it would be more appropriate to be appointed. Just as I think judges should be appointed, not elected.
We'll just take one last question then now from...
This is one for Andrew. Is it right that if you insult the EU, you could be arrested? I've been told there's a law where it cannot be
No,
EU.
no. I think Mr. Farage insulted Mr. Rumpoy and said that he was dressed like a third-rate bank clerk or whatever. We have our arguments with Mr. Van Rompuy, but it's not over the suit that he wears. And I think that making remarks about people's appearance or whatever.
About the actual EU. No. You insult the EU.
No, well, I frequently do that.
The purpose of this trip and the purpose of bringing everybody into this building, into this meeting room, is not to enthuse people about the EU institutions and to get everybody to go away and become huge EU enthusiasts as such. Clearly not. But what we do want to do is give people an insight into the sort of work that goes on here and what our MEPs get up to at the end of the day, because some people may think, well, what's the point? It's a waste of time over there. MEPs should be spending their time doing other things. And some MEPs do actually use that excuse for their own inactivity themselves, for their own terrible attendance record. Particularly from one of the political groups just mentioned then, from our country, they use this excuse, well, we're not in favour of the European institutions, so we don't go to meetings, we'll spend our time doing things in our constituencies. But the fact is, they don't spend time doing very much in the constituencies either. They treat the place, they don't take it seriously whatsoever. So they do that on the one hand. On the other hand, they have no problem whatsoever with claiming the huge, the staff allowances and salaries that they get. They don't mind, they don't mind the European project in that aspect. But we don't view it like that. We think that it's important to do the job to the best of our abilities, essentially, and that's reflected in the job that Andrew does as an MEP in particular. He was mentioned before the speeches that he gives in the Parliament, and in his first year as an MEP, his official ranking was 62nd out of 62nd doesn't sound too good, does it, if it's out of 100 or something, but out of 736 MEPs, that's very good. It puts him well in top of the top. Well in top of the top 10% of MEPs in terms of the number of times he's spoken in the Parliament, so well inside the top 10%. But that's even more impressive when you consider that, as has been mentioned, Andrew is part of the non-attached group, and as a result of that, he gets less opportunities to speak. Anyway, all the top speakers in the Parliament are vice presidents of the Parliament, or they're in the main political groups, because they get more speaking time. The speaking time in the Parliament, as has been mentioned, is very strictly allocated, and we in the non-attached are the very, very bottom of the heap. MEPs in the non-attached group really are sort of second-class MEPs in many respects. So the fact that, despite that, it's managed to be 62nd is an even greater achievement. And if in a weighted comparison, it'd probably put him in the top 1, 2, or 3% or something like that. So this speeches in the Parliament is just one side of it, and obviously it's my job and Eddie's job and all the other assistants' job to try and publicise this.
That concluded our visit. On the way home, we managed to stop off at a British war grave. It was an excellent morale-boosting trip that was very educational for all those who went.
It was a really good trip. I recommend it to any members. So I hope to see you all next year on this trip.
Absolutely fantastic weekends. We've had a great time, and many thanks to MEP Andrew Brons and his assistant here.
Had a great weekend, meeting people from the past who I've known and meeting new friends.
Thoroughly enjoyable, extremely enlightening, very interesting and educational.
Yeah, the weekend's been really fun and educational. I'm really glad that I came.
Yeah, on behalf of everybody on the trip, it was superb.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Our thanks goes to Andrew Brons, MEP, for making it possible.